Caroline, we're live on YouTube. Yay!
Let's go. Can't wait for
Let's
people to
go.
join us.
I know. Okay, let's see. Let's wait a little bit for
Okay.
people to come into the room. Let's check. Let me check it out. Yay, we have three people with us right now, right on time. Super encouraging.
Thanks
Okay.
for being here. It's good
Yeah,
to virtually be with you all, even if we can't see your faces.
yeah, for sure. All right. You know what? Let's get started because I just want to keep us on time and respect everybody's hour that they've given us in the middle of the day. Hello, I see your chat. Wait, it says, okay. It's a baby Saja says, hi, friends. I don't know who that is, but that's cute because I think that's somebody from K-pop Demon Hunters, maybe.
I know. I was like, if their name is actually Saja, this is their moment. But
Oh, this is Joyce.
oh.
So, hey, Joyce. I love that you're
Hello.
baby Saja. That's amazing. Okay. Well, let me get us started. Um, all right. Well, just welcome again to everybody joining us, and also everybody watching online, watching the recording online. We are Khora Collective, and this is Khora Conversations. And I am Yuli Lee with Khora Collective, and I'm super excited that you're here for this amazing conversation with Caroline Lancaster. If you didn't know, once a month we go live with incredible guests to unpack real leadership lessons, insights, challenges, breakthroughs that shape how we lead as Asian American Christian leaders. And at Cora Collective, our vision is to create a kingdom culture of leadership that is generous and spacious for all Asian American Christian ministry and marketplace leaders across all generations. And so our live webinars are really this unique way to invite voices you may not get to hear from all the time, but whose lived experiences and leadership lessons can help us think differently, grow intentionally, lead with greater impact. So let's dive right in because I don't want to waste any time. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating power as Asian American Christian leaders with our amazing guest and my friend, Caroline Lancaster. Let me give a little bio. This is like the short version of her bio. Her bio is super long, but I'm going to read the short version. Caroline Lancaster is a South Asian American faith leader and writer with over a decade of ministry experience in multi-ethnic ministry and an MDiv from Fuller Theological Seminary. Her work centers on the intersections of identity, faith, and leadership, with a particular gift for creating spaces of belonging and empowering leaders of color. Also, as co host of the Faith and Chai podcasts, a mentor and a preacher, Caroline brings a unique ability to bridge theological depth with real life application. Welcome, Caroline.
I'm so grateful to be here and excited for this conversation.
Yes, me too. All right. So I have had the distinct privilege of preparing for this conversation with you. And I've loved our times together because I've gotten just a snippet, just a little window into more of who you are and the amazing leader you are, and the stories that you have to share with us. And as we were brainstorming content for this conversation, we landed on this topic of navigating power as Asian American leaders because it was important and meaningful for you personally, and also as well as all of us collectively. So I would love for you to tell our audience why this topic became important to you
Mhm.
and why you think it's important for all Asian American leaders to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, talking about power, it's not necessarily like an interest, but it comes from being a woman of color in the workplace. It comes from being South Asian American, and for better or worse, having to learn to articulate what I sensed, what I intuited, the disparities and discrepancies I was experiencing in the workplace or in community context or in ministry. But really, it became important when I started growing in awareness of of the power that I did have. Like I was so used to being socialized and feeling powerless. Like that felt so familiar to not have agency or to not have influence that I think I learned that I was sitting on more power than I realized that I had. And when I started to kind of interrogate that or get curious or explore that, I felt like it opened up an aspect of my leadership that allowed me to flourish, that led to positive experiences for the people that I worked with and people I was mentoring. So I think it's so important for us to talk about because more and more Asian American leaders are growing in influence in multiple industries and in multiple spaces. And what are we going to do with that access and influence? And I think that it's an important conversation for us to have together to process, but also can lead to really meaningful and powerful things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally agree that, you said you were sitting on power, that you had, and um, I think, all of us sit on power, so to
Right.
speak, and becoming aware of that and learning to use it, and influence for good influence or positive influence, I think is going to be so, so important as we're all rising, like you said, into these different leadership positions across the world, not just
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
America. But yeah, and we'll go into the details of like what that looks like and hear more of your story. But tell us a little bit about what you think the problem is that you see. So
Hmm.
what are the problems we're seeing with how leaders navigate power right now, according to your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of us have experiences of unhealthy power dynamics or power dynamics that were working against us or were abused, and there's a range of like tolerance levels for what that abuse looked like. So I guess I want to acknowledge that people have experienced uh, actual abuse at the hands of people who are in power. But even to varying degrees of just knowing what it's like to be under unhealthy leadership. So I think some of the problems, and maybe we can zoom in for Asian American leaders specifically, like for myself as a millennial or for perhaps other Gen X folks, we were raised in the context of an Asian America with minimal representation. And we were still learning to navigate what does it mean to belong in this space and have access and influence. And for better or worse, that came with alignment with whiteness. And by that, I don't necessarily mean white people, but whiteness as its own power system that fitting in, whether on a social level or moving up in the workplace, was about participating in a particular kind of system or dynamic of how power functioned and worked. And I think a lot of the models that we were exposed to whether in the workplace or in the church, was largely informed by those kinds of power dynamics. So I wonder if there's something to finally having gained access to power or influence, if power felt like something, a commodity that we had to hold on to tightly or something that was fleeting, that was always out of reach, that we had to sacrifice for or kind of participate in broken systems in order to gain it or to have access to the room in the first place. But there's so much in that as well. That's like, have we built a foundation of leadership on something that's dysfunctional and unhealthy in the first place? And how does that impact us as human beings, as teammates, as employers, or as people who are trying to do differently with the power that we have gained? So maybe another way of naming it is that I think sometimes the unhealthy expressions of power can come from some unhealed parts of ourselves and from lack of inner work or acknowledgement of what we've gone through that can lead to misusing power or abusing power. Um, I could jump into another dynamic, but I'm curious if you want to add any thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I really resonate with the, lack of examples that, we have or that we don't have, whatever the right way is to say that phrase. And that continues to be the case, even though we're
Hmm.
rising into different leadership positions that have more power, or I'm seeing more of us these days do that. Yet still, I encounter people like new employees who are, quote unquote, below me, or just, starting out in their careers, coming in, and they're so surprised whenever they see me. Because
Hmm.
to them also, even though they're a new generation, it's like the first time they've seen an Asian American
Hmm.
female leader um,
Yeah.
in a certain position.
Right.
And so in some ways, it's exciting that we're starting to assume these different positions of power, and in other ways, it's still a little bit sad that it's
Hmm.
surprising to the younger generation still, and they're
Right.
searching and they want to see us, they want to meet us, and it's encouraging for me as somebody who is in their late 40s to know that
Hmm.
a Gen Zer wants to spend time with me.
Hmm. Yeah.
It makes me like think, oh, okay, maybe I'm not too old yet. But yeah, I think the desire is really like, they've never really seen leadership modeled
Yeah.
from that
Right.
Asian American perspective. And
Right. And not in a way that's like generic, right? But that your Asian Americanness actually is integrated into your leadership or influences how you show up, or your faith shapes how you show up, rather than, okay, this might be an Asian American woman, but she's just replicating all the other kinds of leaderships that I've experienced.
yes, exactly. Yeah. And then also, I love that you said perhaps we've built leadership on dysfunctional systems or foundations in the first place. That's something I think we need to really reflect on. Um,
Mm,
and, like what have we like aligned ourselves with?
mhm,
Where did we get our leadership values and principles from? And all of those questions I think need further study, like self-study. We need to like
yeah,
critically examine ourselves and the origins of where we got our leadership principles to see
right.
like, yeah, is it whiteness that I'm trying to cozy up with? Is it, something in my culture that's not quite yet
Hmm.
healthy? Or is it a wound that I haven't yet,
Hmm.
you know? All of those are so good, Caroline. And I think that, yeah, hopefully we can get to I think we're going to get to the
Hmm.
practice
Hmm.
like later on as we move into the convo. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
The
So
the other name dynamic that I wanted to name, especially in Christian contexts, and this could show up in community spaces, in churches or faith-based organizations, especially ones that are Asian American, but is this concept of servant leadership and how it relates with power. Because I think that's we can gravitate to, oh, servant leadership is the answer to how we deal with power. It is a relinquishing of power, but again, as both of us probably have many stories, like I've seen that weaponized against women, like an enforced servant leadership posture, or almost like a utilization of power in order to reinforce someone's position as being in the margins or on the sidelines. So I think I kind of want to for us to dig into that a little bit more and know like what are the beautiful aspects of that concept and what is there to retain, and actually how do we also need to be cautious about how that could be kind of a distorted use of power as well.
yeah, that is so good. I think of a lot of different ways that servant leadership has been used against me to get me to do a lot of things and to
Mm-hmm.
almost like extract my gifts and talents.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, in certain situations, rather than valuing me for who I am or,
Right.
uplifting my dignity as
Mhm.
somebody made in the image of Christ. And so that's good. I do want to dig more into that and curious though if you also have an example or story that you can share regarding that. Like, does something come to you in terms of that phrase being used against you as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, uh, so as an Indian American woman, I think sometimes I've even internalized this perspective that I need to serve. I need to serve my elders. I need to serve the community. And I can assess power dynamics and also my place in that very quickly. Like even walking into an Indian person's home, you know who is allowed to sit where. Like if there's only one sofa, you can quickly gauge my place is going to be on the floor. I need to save that space for someone else. And it might be similar from your heritage as well. But being able to map and analyze that, and actually, I think I internalized some of those things. So sometimes it was asked of me. This could look like anything from um, like do X, Y, and Z for the minimum amount of money because really you're doing it for the honor of contributing. And like, who are you to ask for like something, period, when this should just be your posture, or kind of the sacrifice as being honored beyond healthy boundaries of someone's time. So even feeling like the burden of contributing to the life of the church, which is a beautiful thing. But I feel like there's a crossing point or threshold beyond like sacrifice your family for the sake of the church. Like that's kind of unhealthy, or like the expectations to give and give at a particular cost to yourself, and that just being part of your reward in the kingdom of heaven is like this sacrifice is being a point of valor. And I think that women and Asian Americans generally like doubly so experience that. So some of it was like what I was socialized to understand about myself and what I internalized. So sometimes that also meant like I was given 110% in any context that I'm in, partly because that's how I was raised, to work as unto the Lord, to serve the community. But organizations and institutions don't necessarily relate to us in the same way as being humans that are part of a community system that is mutual or interdependent. And sometimes that's understandable, like to treat an organization or a corporation as what it is, and to know that they will not honor our humanity as an entity in the same way that we would for ourselves or for one another in an interpersonal context. So I had to be able to set boundaries for myself to be able to discern what is a valid and what is a God invited giving of self, and what is beyond the bounds. Like where is a place where I'm actually being asked to overextend myself or like squeeze out any kind of resource in a very capitalistic sense for production that is outside of the bounds of what is healthy. That's just kind of just being justified by this spiritual lens.
Yeah, that is so relatable, Caroline. I think, well, it reminds me of this book that I'm reading right now. I think literally it's called Quit. It's not a Christian book, but it's fascinating because it compares and contrasts grit with
Hmm.
quit. And
Interesting.
how, like, if we want to bring it into our Christian space, basically what perseverance and
Hmm.
sacrifice, those kinds of Christianese words, versus like discerning when to
Hmm.
stop or say no.
Yeah.
Um, I think is a really important skill to
Hmm.
develop. And it's interesting because in this book it says grit is often a heroic act, like when we
Hmm.
persevere and like, do when we stick to something.
Yeah.
It's basically like a heroic thing. But when we quit or stop or pivot, because we've discerned, like,
Hmm.
oh, this thing is actually not contributing to the thriving of myself and
Yeah.
also my community.
Yeah.
That's seen as like cowardice.
Hmm.
And I just think
Wow.
fascinating and maybe like a parallel sort of conversation to what, you shared in your story.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting. It reminded me, I was on a very high performing team where this was kind of a shared value, like sacrificing for the sake of the mission, for the sake of the community, for the sake of each other. And we would work a lot. We would work crazy hours. We would give our best. If our department had an Enneagram, we would have been a three, like we were going above and
Department.
beyond. Yeah, but like you said, it actually was taking a toll on us and our well-being. So our team committed to healthier practices, to keeping boundaries, to it's a Christian context, so we were committed to taking a Sabbath. And it was fascinating to see how actually we could still honor our calling, we could still honor the mission, but in a way that allowed us to have much more longevity and to also not be defined by our output, but to entrust that and say, like, we are going to not sacrifice ourselves for the sake of this, but actually be in this work for the long-term journey. And that requires stepping away, that requires rest, that requires boundaries.
That's so good. And that also requires an awareness that you have power to create the
Right,
boundaries and take,
right.
and these kinds of things. So that's a good segue into the next question. I would love for you to answer for us is how do you define stewarding power in a way that aligns with the values of Christ?
Yeah. I don't know if I have like a short and sweet definition of it, but I approach stewarding power as what are the resources that I've been given? What are the spaces of influence that I have? What is my voice in this space? What are the dynamics of my identity that lend me power and privilege? How can I hold all of that and use it for the flourishing of all? And so, to take kind of like a very fluffy concept down, like when I became a manager of my own team, then I was confronted with the choice of how am I going to define success for this team? How am I going to choose to value like approach our time management? What am I going to say are the values that drive what we do? And I then had a choice to set the tone, obviously as part of bigger initiatives and bigger goals and metrics that we're trying to achieve, but I'm the one that can say let's shift how we work, or let's adjust this timeline. At the end of the day, like, who is impacted by this, and it is okay to adjust. So sometimes it was these micro, I mean, it didn't actually feel micro. Sometimes they were bigger, like we are going to change our philosophy of project management, or our approach to how we work together, and that there's costs in that. And at other times it was micro adjustments, like because we were faith-based, I was working on a faith-based context. A large percentage of our meeting times was dedicated to prayer. And some of that came from how I like my faith distinctly as an Indian Christian and the role that prayer has played in the life of our family and our community, that we truly believe in conversations with God and being able to relate to God and seek wisdom from God, and to prioritize in principle that we are doing our work alongside God. I was like, this is costly, but I will give like 25% of every meeting to say we are going to protect this time for prayer, for discernment, for listening. So that was kind of like a microwave, but it changed the culture of our team. And it changed our values when people said, we're not saying that getting things done is going to push this agenda item aside. But we have a hard stop at this point, and we will turn to prayer and we will turn to listening to the Spirit. So it was a way of stewarding power and creating culture, as a manager um, that allowed me to know like this has an impact on the team that I'm working with, and this is changing what we're creating, even like the fundamentals of what we're producing, but also how we're all doing as we try to do this work together.
Yeah, that is so inspiring. I think we don't realize as leaders, even the micro shifts that you talk about, how they can create macro change
Mhm.
in our teams and organizations, and how also teams themselves can feel siloed in orgs, but
Mhm.
teams can have ripple effects across the
Yeah,
org.
that's right.
as well. I'm curious how the people you manage and your team, like, were they all bought into the ways in which you wanted to change how the meetings were led, or did you encounter resistance? I can't imagine somebody resisting prayer time, but I'm curious, like, how that team dynamic kind of gelled together.
Right. I mean, for the prayer piece, I will say, so this is like a national team that met monthly for an hour and a half. And we were going through a time of organizational change. So when I even named, like, we're protecting this time for prayer, some of them were shocked because time is value. And they knew that we had these national agenda items like strategic plan initiatives that we're trying to move forward. And this was the time that we had set apart to be together. But so some of them were skeptical, though excited for the possibility. And I think some of them were surprised when month after month I stuck with it. And even as urgent things came up, to say we're going to find other communications channels to address this or make sure we're really using our time well, because this is also important and it's a non-negotiable. So in that sense, there was more surprise and shock that it wasn't just like, this is a great idea, but you have the startup energy of doing a great idea, and then sometimes it's like business needs to happen or stress or urgency shift things even in a meeting agenda, but that we committed to it and it sustained us through that organizational change and really offered us a sense of being grounded when things could have felt really overwhelming or stressful. And in the other context where with my team, I changed how we approached working on a project together in collaboration. In some ways, there was a little bit of skepticism of like, how is this going to work? And a cost, like, how will this impact the other responsibilities that I have on my plate when you're asking me to give this time in a way that I haven't usually given? But they also welcomed, and I think this is a note for Asian American leaders, they loved that I told them what to do. And that was also novel because I think sometimes we appreciate consensus and value that as Asian American leaders and are can shrink back from leveraging power because we're afraid of squashing others' voices. We know what it's like to have our own voices squashed. But in this sense, it felt so freeing because they're like, I know how to execute and give you what you wanted because you were so clear with the ask. And you know me well enough to know that I actually can contribute to the team in this way. So I had to overcome my internal fears of like, well, they feel like I'm just being a mean boss and I'm like do this, do that. But actually to see how freeing it was for them to say, I'm not guessing what you want from me, and I know I can deliver it. And I have freedom and permission to ask for help when I'm getting stuck. So after we did it, it was so fun, actually. And I think we felt like, wow, we changed our project timeline from like a 6 month turnaround to a 2 month turnaround on a project because we were actually working more wisely together and collaborating well.
Yeah. Okay. This is amazing because I also struggle with um, giving people to-dos. Because I think it's, what we're talking about today. I think my desire to be a good leader leads me in the direction of saying something like, hey, here's a project. I totally trust you. So go and let me know if you need help. I'm always here. However, I have experienced a lot of people tell me and give me feedback and say, like, I'd rather have you tell me what to do,
Yeah,
actually. And I was
yeah,
like, really? You really want me to
yeah.
tell you what to do? And I was like, oh, I feel so bad, like telling
Mm,
you what to do. But like you said, I think people appreciate clear expectations.
yeah,
In general, I think it's clarity, what people are looking for. They don't want to waste their time
yeah,
either.
true.
Yeah, kind of floundering around trying to figure out like what I actually want.
Yeah,
Because even though I may not even want a certain thing, I think the people who are working with and for us, they're always thinking like, oh, what would my boss want? Or what
yeah.
would my leader want? And so,
And there's
yeah,
also a vulnerable awareness that at the end of the day, you are the one that can say, no, I don't like this. Like
yeah,
they could do something and then bring it before you and then have you veto it. And I think that's also an awareness of the power that we have as like if we're the ultimate decision makers, if we have the final say on things, of course we hold that cautiously, but that's also maybe where some of the desire for clarity comes from the people that we might work with.
Yes, that is so good. Okay, I want to know your opinion on how do you discern the difference when you give people to-dos and direction? How do you know if that's freeing versus micromanaging?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's generational differences here. So I've heard that millennials like agency and autonomy. We want to be co-creators in whatever we're envisioning together. Versus Gen Z, it's like, tell me how to be successful, and maybe even needs things broken down a little bit more. So, what might even the level of detail that you might give someone who is Gen Z might not be experienced as being as micromanagey as if you were to give that same level of detail to someone from a different generation. So some of it is like knowing your team, but I've tried. I think I can tend towards micromanaging. So what I've tried to hold is being very clear about the end result and the end product, giving as many info and details as I can about that. Like this is where we want to go together, and from there, kind of collaborating with what are your thoughts about how we get there? And then let me offer you some deadlines. Let me offer you some like milestones that we can hit or break it down. So there is a little bit of collaboration, but I think the super micromanagey becomes it feels like I don't think you can do this. So I'm gonna over tell you what basically I want to do myself, but want your body to do for me.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Want your body to do for me. Yes. That's a good way to capture micromanaging behavior. Yes, it's basically, yeah, like not being able to trust the person
Yeah,
uh, with parts of the process. And like you said, like it's a back and forth
yeah,
conversation and giving feedback along the way. I love that you start also by letting them know what the end goal is, and then having that conversation to collaborate on the process. I think that's super
right.
wise. Yeah, it's creating that environment and relationship
Yeah,
in your team.
yeah,
Yeah. I love that, Caroline. Okay, and that's super practical. I feel like anybody could take that piece of like that nugget of advice and like apply it to their teams.
yeah. On
Uh,
on a practical level, I will also say if you are an Asian American Christian leader, manager who's in like a supervisor position, I would really analyze the equity on your team. Like, do you know how much every person that you supervise is getting paid? And are you addressing if there are discrepancies or pay gaps? What are the developmental opportunities that each of the people on your team have before them? Are there differences in that? Who could you envision being your successor? And if it happens to be a male, is there a reason why it's not a female on your team? If it happens to be a particular race or ethnicity, is there reasons why you didn't gravitate towards others? And what are you doing in order to help equip them so that they could succeed you someday or so that they could have these developmental opportunities?
that's so good. When you were talking, I thought about promotions actually.
Hmm.
How, you climbed the ladder, so to speak, into a managerial position, had people to oversee and were responsible for, and you could speak into salaries and all of this stuff, and really create equity, as much as you could. Um,
Right, right.
and I feel like somebody like you is like we need more managers like you being promoted into positions of influence to think about
Hmm.
these things that you're asking us to
Hmm.
think about. But oftentimes the promotional pipeline is broken, and you see
Hmm.
people being promoted because somebody higher up likes them, or
Right. Right.
for the dysfunctional reasons that we don't
Yeah.
really have to name out loud, but we all know about. Um, and, what advice would you give to like somebody who wants to go get into a managerial role one day,
Hmm.
like, and you want to prepare, let's say you're their coach and you're
Hmm.
coaching them to become one of the best managers
Hmm.
in your workplace. Like, what would you tell them how would you tell them to prepare? And what would you tell
Hmm.
them to think about?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think of two categories. One is like the strategic path within your work context. And one is like the personal formational path, and that integrates who you are. So I'll start with the strategic one. And this is some advice that senior leaders and exec leaders gave me, which I'm really grateful for. I've been blessed to also have healthy examples of leadership, Asian American leaders that I worked with, men, women, South Asian leaders. So someone told me, like, you don't only need advocates. I think as women of color, we're often coached, like, find an advocate, someone who could cheer for you. And we do need those, like, internal marketing people, like people who will bring up our name in conversations or opportunities, but also find sponsors. And the delineation that he was making is like find someone who will actually help open up the opportunities for you, like choose you on a project or work with you. Like so, it's a little bit a step above a an advocate who just knows you and can recommend you. But in their areas of influence, who are sponsors? Who do you like to work with? How can you contribute to the project, and what can you offer them? So kind of surrounding yourself with the right people and asking them and getting clarity on what are the experiences that I need to have on my track record in order to be viewed as a candidate for this role. And a lot of times, like at least in my context, it was kind of like just be good at your job. And it felt like inevitably you will be considered for other roles. But that's not true. You know, like I can be great at my job, but if I wasn't getting certain strategic uh, program lead options or leading certain projects, then I wouldn't have had visibility or even be able to say, like, have a track record of success to say, I accomplished this and this is what it resulted in. So I think for the job that you want, find that job description or interview them. Like, what experiences were you asked about in your interview? What were the expectations of the deeds done? And how can you work if you hopefully have a good supervisor to make those developmental opportunities? So that's kind of like the strategic marketplace context. But really, like some of the people who I am actively mentoring towards senior leadership, I want them to think about the kind of leader they want to be. So, what are the values that you want to define your leadership? What do you want to be true of the teams that you work with? What aspects of your faith or your heritage do you want to integrate into the shape of your leadership? And how can you practice that in your current areas of influence? So, it's like everyone probably has some time to lead a meeting. I feel like meetings are really fun playgrounds to align your priorities, your personalities, your like what you tend to value. So I'm a very relational person. I'll always have some sort of relational connection. And I'm thankful for team cultures that have been built into that. But how can I practice already in the context that I'm in, being the kind of leader that I want to be? And that's an exercise of power to know that that comes with intentionality and wisdom. But we can think of success as being replicating the leadership that we've seen, but we also have agency to say, what do I want? Who do I want to be as a leader? And how am I going to show up?
Yeah, oh, that's such good advice, Caroline. And I really like I like these like both of these different ways of thinking as leaders want to grow into different kinds of positions. The first one with the strategy, I feel like you were asking us to expand our power base.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have our own power, but also like how can you expand your power base by asking sponsors and other people like above you to help you along your journey. And I really like that. I think oftentimes we're afraid, or we can be afraid to like ask others to like
Mm-hmm.
collaborate with us in power, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and not only that, but like we mentioned earlier, we're afraid to own our own power as well.
Mm.
So how did you get to a point where you stopped being afraid of your own power? Like, tell us a little
Ooh.
bit about that journey.
The way that you phrase that, I feel like it hit me in my soul because there's different levels of that. You know, there's power that's expressed in terms of leadership, but there's also like, for me as a brown woman, owning the power that I have has really been like a journey, and it has been incredibly freeing to embrace who God has made me to be, like as an image bearer of God, with my personality, with my story, in my Indianness. and to resist the ways that society or heritage or like gender dynamics, like all these things try to make me small, but to say I'm going to take up that space and to not be afraid to do it. And I'm like, the journey of getting there is long, and I'm thankful for friends and therapists and like spiritual directors and micro places of experimenting along the way to help draw out that voice and draw out that freedom for me to take up at that space. So there's power on that level, and getting over power, like my fear of like replicating the unhealthy things that I had seen. Um, it took knowing that I'm going to make mistakes as a leader, but also knowing that because I have seen so many things and because I'm committing to lead differently, it's going to make me a different type of leader. And it is going to be a gift to myself and those around me to not pretend like you don't have these leadership skills, but to say, like, actually, let me take up that space. Let me kind of collect all the power that I have and use it with wisdom. And that also took a gracious community. I have a wonderful team that I worked with for like a decade, and they were a gracious learning for me community for me, like watching me grow in my leadership and finally take over and lead the team. But were patient along the way. But I knew things that being on the receiving end of unhealthy power. So I built in feedback loops of knowing what it meant to check in with people along the way. I practice like telling the truth. You know, it's hard giving feedback at times, but I also saw that it was a disservice when I didn't receive feedback. And it was kind of like used against me in subtle ways that I wasn't growing because I didn't know, you know? So to be able to offer clear feedback in love, but build relational trust so that my team really knows that I'm for them and being the kind of leader that truly is for their success. Like I'm not out here just for my own gain or like to move up on a career ladder, but I'm here to see us all experience a sense of fulfillment and contribute to something meaningful and want to show up to our work and want to engage with each other because it's so much of our life, you know?
Ah, that's so good. Your story reminds me of a story that I recently shared with you about being afraid to replicate
Hmm.
like toxic leadership behavior that I've also seen. Like you, I've seen so many not so great ways of leading. And, I just don't want to replicate any of that anywhere I go.
Hmm.
But I don't know if it was fear necessarily or what actually it was, but I remember a moment where I was like, ooh, I kind of don't want to make that decision or do that particular thing
Hmm.
because it reminds me of that bad leader that I
Hmm.
had like 20 years ago
Ah.
or something. And I remember sharing this with one of the co-founders of Khora Collective, and he was so wise and gracious, and he said, "Yuli, but you're not that leader. Like you're
Hmm.
not that
Hmm.
person. You're like you. Like God
Yeah.
created you, you. There's only one Yuli. So if you do that similar thing, but you do it through the expression of your own leadership,
Hmm.
your own wisdom and discernment, he's like, you should just go for it, and
Yeah.
I really appreciated that because I think, like you said,
Yeah.
it reminded me to embrace who God has made me to be and the leadership gifts He has given me,
Yeah.
in particular. Otherwise, yeah, we become our biggest obstacle in our own,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I underestimated how much me leading out of who I am, my intuitions, my desires, my like human person first, like in supervision, how much that would positively impact the team that I worked with. And like it has been such a privilege and honor to supervise people generations older than me, people from different racial backgrounds, like men and women who have experienced feeling so seen and actually grown in skills and taken risks because of my leadership and a different manager might not have offered them that. And that is both like humbling and phenomenal. to think that like God could place me in someone's life in such a unique way. And especially for Asian American Christian leaders who are in the workplace, I'm like, to even view the people that you work with as humans, to care for them on a deeper level rather than just what they produce or what they can do for you. It like that kind of impact, that embodied witness is so significant, and it is so meaningful to be able to live into that and know that actually it comes a lot more easily when I'm not trying to pretend or like contort myself into a different example of leadership, but to just be myself. I didn't think that I would be such a gift, and it feels like even weird to name that, but we are gifts as Asian American Christian leaders. Like we can be a gift, a unique gift to those around us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that. That's, spirit of Quora is we want to embrace and talk about how gifted Asian American Christian leaders are,
Hmm.
and how much value we bring in every space we occupy. And so, and just the fact that you said, I am a gift, I
Hmm.
celebrate that. And I wish more of us would say that out loud about
Hmm.
ourselves. And when you were talking and you said, I didn't realize how blessed my team would be, or something like that, that really blessed me so much. And it reminded me of this young leader I was talking to the other day. She works in a really big church, but she is all about efficiency. So on
Hmm.
Sunday morning, she's like running around, like literally running across her church to like be really efficient with the work that she's been given on Sundays. And she was telling me how she needed to make sure she stopped running, and
Hmm.
actually talk to people, because that's what ministry is all about, is relationships and connecting with people and listening. And she said what she learned was that she perhaps maybe is like the one pastor for one, like she's like the only pastor for one person, you know, that that
Hmm.
that one person has. And like if she didn't stop
Hmm.
running to listen, like that person wouldn't have had a pastor that day. You know,
Whoa.
that reminds me of your story, or your story reminded me of that, like when you said, like I might be like the manager, like in your own unique expression of being a manager, like it's like the manager that your team needed.
Hmm.
And, maybe there's somebody, in your workplace, whoever is listening to this webinar, who like you're the only expression of a healthy leader
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
have. It's your opportunity to
Yeah.
express that and show them like, hey, this is what good leadership looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
to,
I want to underscore the healthy piece
yeah.
because it's not easy. It's not easy to, just steward power to make these changes. Like it takes deep inner work and healing because sometimes it's actually going to be hard. Sometimes like choosing to lead in particular ways, choosing to honor the other. Like I really draw from Philippians 2 that Jesus, though God didn't count equality with God as something to be grasped, but humbled himself and kind of emptied himself. So we see Christ emptying himself of power and privilege for the sake of the other, or the body of Christ, like honoring these parts, like and to truly live with that ethic places us in a countercultural position. And there might be a cost to that. Like it is not, it might not be the path of success to choose to work in this way. And so I just want to name like it is to not be out just for yourself, but to care for your team, to want to see others succeed. Like it is humbling because it might mean a little bit of anonymity, or it might not make you as shiny, or sometimes it might put you in resistance or moving against the stream of the expectations that your senior leaders have for you, or the organizational expectations. But that's where we have to really do the inner work and draw a foundation so we can have a particular ethic that shapes who we are as leaders and how we steward our leadership, because it is a humbling path to navigate power in this way, not just hoard it and say, now that I've received power, I'm going to do what I can for me, but to be faithful with the power that we've been given.
That's so good. And that's a good segue into focusing in on that inner work piece that you mentioned and, trying our best and committing to that health. As leaders, I'm curious to get your advice on, what might be some practical ways our listeners can do some of this inner work. What have you tried just super practically that has worked for you? Yeah,
Hmm.
share with us.
Yeah, I mean, everyone should be in therapy. Little
Totally
therapy
agree.
promo.
Yep. Yeah.
So that is a huge path for healing, and maybe to even break down like how do I know what kind of healing I need, or how do I know what's happening? Like, um, I would say to pay attention to your own desires. And what do you want? Like, do you find yourself envious? Like, follow that curiosity. Where does that sense of envy come from? Do you find yourself resentful or bitter of opportunities that other people have? Like, follow that. Where does that bitterness and resentment come from? There's like a healthy comparison, and there could be like an unhealthy comparison of wanting to tear other people down. Like, where is that coming from in you, and is there more that you desire to do or contribute, but something that's making it difficult to be able to show up the way that you want to, or are called to? So I would say kind of pay attention to the inner monologue that comes and let that be a starting point for, are there unhealed places? So for me, like a lot of my journey in my 20s and my early 30s was around validation, like needing external approval or encouragement or validation of like, you can do this, in order for me to feel like I needed to do this. And internalized patriarchy, internalized white supremacy, like all of these things can come up, but to realize like I don't need someone else who I have ascribed power and influence over my life to say that I am deserving of something, or that I would be good for this, for me to believe it. Like, what do I know about myself? How have I grown? How do I want to continue to heal so that I can envision a path for myself? And whether someone else around me sees it or not, I have an imagination for myself. I have a healed imagination that could also be okay with failure down that particular path, which was really hard for me to get to, but could also be okay with success and having a sense of identity that is not caught up in the job title or salary or equity, whatever that may be, like especially for working people in this age, but to be rooted and grounded in my values of who God says that I am, who I believe myself to be, and to let that center me. So yeah, paying attention to those things, bringing it up with friends, sharing stories. One other thing, like if you've received negative feedback as a leader, or if you've made mistakes, that kind of guilt can really stifle us in our leadership, or it can start to define us. So whatever the healing path is for addressing that and doing actual learning from receiving negative feedback, or constructive feedback, or even sometimes feedback that's not given in the best ways, because sometimes that's the reality as managers is we get people's unfiltered thoughts, but to be able to internalize and take what's good, like find a coach, find someone to walk alongside you to say, help me work through this, and know what is for your own spiritual work with God. Know it's like a practical, maybe there's a skill to develop here. Um, and be courageous to engage those parts of yourself and know that you don't need to be defined by those mistakes or failures. And there's actually an opportunity for growth in that.
Yeah, that's such good advice, Caroline. I want to ask the people joining us live to chat in any questions that you might have for Caroline. And I'm going to give people some time to chat in their questions. And then while they're chatting in, I'll respond to what you just talked about, Caroline. A mentor used to say to me when I receive negative feedback, to not let it come at me like a porcupine needle, which I
Hmm.
guess like when porcupines like shoot their needles out, um, and and the needle like hooks onto something, it kind of like bends a little and like
Oh,
hook.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's like actually hard to pull out.
It's not coming out.
Yeah. And so I remember my mentor saying, like, don't let feedback enter your heart that way, like a
Mm.
porcupine needle that hooks into your heart. Because then when you try to pull it out, like parts of your heart will rip. I know that's
Oof.
like gory now, but like that image stuck with me forever.
Mm.
And she's like, so don't let it come at you that way, but still receive it, in
Mm.
a way where, like you said, where you can learn and grow and
Yeah.
turn it into something productive for you. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
That's good.
So, but I think the feedback thing is really hard for a lot of people. For
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. I mean, and for a long time, I felt like I could not fail because as a woman of color, there it just felt like that was a luxury that I could not have. I had to be excellent so that I could be invited back. Like it was so unusual to be afforded opportunities or to be invited for the table. And it was like, this guy over here could make 10 mistakes and will still be invited. But if I make a mistake, I won't be invited. And I think I carried the weight and burden of that on myself and operated with this scarcity mentality, but it's like there's so many more. It wasn't just me, and I didn't need to carry that myself. Like, what is it about the system that means that I'm not invited back? And what does that say about the spaces or opportunities that I want to say yes to or want to receive? Or what are the expectations that I have on people that I work with or mentor? Like, is there room for failure, and is there trust that they will continue to be part of the team and like be a meaningful addition?
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay, we got one question from somebody who was curious if a history of receiving harsh feedback influences interpretation of like productive or gentle feedback in the future. Like, like if you've received so many negative comments about yourself, like how do you, I guess, in some ways, enter into that feedback space again and be
Mm,
able to interpret something that's not bad, Like I feel like that's a good question
mm,
because I feel like it could just train us to receive all feedback as bad going forward.
yeah.
I guess how do you discern?
Yeah. And I wish I saw a stat that like female professors receive like 70% negative critiques from students versus like male professors only receive like 20% of critiques. So kind of an asterisk on feedback. And this is where also knowing yourself and knowing your work, I think, plays a part in it. So I don't want to say that any feedback that you get, if this person's kind of talking about being in the position of being on the receiving end of feedback, to um, uh, differentiate yourself from what is given to you and also know what dynamics might be at play. So, is this person for you? What has been your experience and trust with this person? Also, are they going through stress? And is the feedback that you're receiving actually coming from something that they're receiving? So, I think it kind of can help to know. I mean, we're all going to be impacted by what we're told, especially if there's been harsh and negative feedback. And again, some of it might be for us, and some of it might be, why is this person speaking to me in this way regularly? And also learning how to request, like, does feedback come at appropriate times or is it at inappropriate times? And being able to say, I would love to get your thoughts on this when at like this particular meeting, buying yourself time, or could you consolidate some of your feedback and can we work on it together? Or kind of asking them like, how can I grow? So it kind of restores a sense of agency of not just like receiving the harsh criticism, but like, how can we work together? Or protecting yourself if sometimes the harsh criticism is unwarranted or is coming at an unfair time, like either you internally can give that back to them and keep doing your job, or you might say, like, this impacted me in this way. I really want to get your feedback, but could we have some buffers or parameters or set a rhythm for when this kind of feedback comes my way?
That's so good. Okay, I don't want to end this conversation, but I can't believe we only have 1 minute left.
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh, there's another question that came in that's also good. But perhaps this person can connect with you after the webinar. But first, before we share how people can connect with you further, Carolyn, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today on Quora Conversations and just for having this wonderful conversation. I was learning as we were talking from your great wisdom and experience, and I can't wait also to apply some of the things that you talked about today. But can you tell our wonderful audience where they can find you if they want to connect with you and ask you more questions?
Yeah, totally. And I know we just scratched the surface of this conversation. There's so much more we could go to, and I would love to keep the conversation going. People can find me on Instagram at Caroline Susie, my first name and my middle name, Susie together. Or they can follow the Faith and Chai podcast at Faith and Chai on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, I already follow Caroline, so join me in Caroline's fan club, and and we'll also at Cora Collectives on our handles, we'll post a follow-up to this webinar and share Caroline's handles as well as a link to her podcast. With that being said, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to have another wonderful live webinar next month. So follow our socials to learn more about the details of those. But for today, we just want to thank Caroline and then thank everybody listening in. And we hope you have a good rest of your week. Take care, everybody. Bye. Yay, I think we're done. I think I did it.